Welcome to Back on the Broomstick,
a modern witch's spoken word grimoire.
where two witchy friends from way back are reconnecting to their pagan roots after a long period of mundanity.
We're rewalking the path of the wise and trying out all the latest spells, rituals, and magical theory in today's witchcraft and pagan practices.
So grab your wand and your incense,
Your cauldron and your crystals,
and join us
as we get
back on the broomstick.
Hi, and welcome to a special meditation edition of Back on the Broomstick. I'm Laylla, and on this episode, we'll be talking about alpha states, how they can help your magical practice, and how to train your brain to enter an alpha state using a meditation inspired by Laurie Cabot's Crystal Countdown. This episode is going to be split up into two parts because I know a lot of you listen while you're driving. So this first episode is going to be all about alpha states, why you want to get into one, and how to get into one. And then the second episode will be the Crystal Countdown meditation itself. So to get started, what is an alpha state? Essentially, an alpha state is a trance state. And trance states have been used by mystics and witches and magical people for millennia to access information that isn't available or isn't as easily accessible when we're in a conscious beta state. There's so much that we don't understand about our brains and about how memory and thought and our mental processes work. But there is a lot that we do understand. The science of the parasympathetic nervous system has been studied for quite a while, and we do now understand the connection between our brains and our bodies. If you think it, you can quite literally make it happen in your body. One example is scientific studies done on the placebo effect, whereby a person is given something innocuous rather than medicine, like a sugar pill, and told that that medicine will cure their illness, their ailment. And their belief, that person's mental belief in that pill and in the power of the person who gave it to them, actually makes it work in their body. Our brains and our belief are an extremely powerful element in our magic. And getting your subconscious, getting that primal, magical, meditating, trance brain to believe you, to believe 100% in the spell and in the words and in the power that you are putting out into the world is a huge part of successful spells and magic. When we talk about alpha states in witchcraft, we're actually talking about a scientifically measurable state of your brain. Our consciousness is actually in about 4 different categories, 4 different measurable states. There's the beta state, which is what we're in right now. It's when you're awake, it's when you're conscious, it's when you're up and doing things. That's your analytical mind. That's your conscious mind. The next state is alpha. Think of that more as when you're falling asleep or when you've just woken up in the morning. That's our daydreaming phase. That phase is the doorway to magic. Alpha state is the boundary between your conscious and your subconscious mind. When you can harness the power of your subconscious purposefully, that's when you really get the power of alpha and are able to use it in your spell work. The next 2 levels that we're not really going to use today are theta, which I call more of the shamanistic brain. That's deep trance work. That's dream work. And that's a topic for a different episode. And then after that is delta. And that's more of the deep sleep. You're completely unconscious, knocked out. There's not much going on in your brain. So we're not going to use theta and delta in this episode. We're mostly going to focus on beta and in particular alpha. An alpha state of mind is that quiet in-between place in your brain where your mind is awake, but it's quieter. It's not as noisy as your conscious brain. You're not asleep. You're not thinking in circles. Your brain is aware and receptive. Scientifically, it's measurable. It's when your brain is producing alpha waves around 8 to 12 hertz. So this is actually something that you can see and measure. When your brain is producing alpha waves, you're more relaxed. You're focused inward. You're not in an active problem-solving, obsessing mode. So again, this is the state that you're usually in right after you wake up or right as you're falling to sleep. And it's the state that you can get into in a good meditation. Magically, this is where your brain likes to do all the work to power your spells. When you're in alpha, you're able to completely bypass your overcritical, over-anxious, overthinking mind. It gives you a direct channel to your subconscious. And your subconscious is where your belief systems, your patterns, where the symbolic language of magic lives. And that's the exact layer of your brain, of your mind, that magic can work through. So when you're doing a spell and you feel like you're just kind of doing it lip service, that's beta. That's your conscious mind. That's just the surface. In a past episode, we talked about being able to use fake money in a money bowl if you can convince your brain that it's real. If you get yourself into an alpha state, you're more suggestible, you're more open to believing that that fake money is truly real, that has the same impact as real money. And that's going to make your spell more powerful. Think of it like this. Your waking mind is the surface of the path. It's dusty, it's dirty, it's got a lot of traffic, there's a lot going on. Alpha is when you sink beneath the dirt, when you're just below the surface, and that's where the seeds that you plant in a spell can grow. Another way to think of your subconscious is as if it's a child. Research has shown that your subconscious processes information much like a toddler would. That means your subconscious learns through repetition, emotion, imagery, and tone, not logic. You can tell a toddler for hours that there is no monster in the closet. You can show them there's no monster in the closet. You can explain that monsters do not exist, but the toddler will still be afraid of the monster. If you give the toddler magic monster be gone spray and let them spray it in the closet, they'll believe that. That will work. Similarly, if you give a toddler Monopoly money and tell them that it's real, they'll believe you. You can use these same type of tricks, if you want to call them that, with your subconscious to get it into the belief mode that you need for manifestation and for magic. Being in an alpha state of mind allows you to get your intentions. And if you listen to Chelle, you know she'll say that intention is everything. It allows you to plant those intentions in fertile soil of your subconscious. It gets you past the resistance of your conscious mind and into the magical part of you that is actually driving your behavior, your perception, and your magical energy. If you try to cast a spell from your busy, analytical, beta state mind, you're only hitting the surface. You're not actually reaching those currents of magic that are in those other levels of your brain, those deeper levels of beta and then even theta, the shamanistic brain. When you leave beta and get into an alpha state, your brain softens. There's less self-criticism. There's less looping thoughts. There's less worry about will this spell work or not, and more certainty that it will. Your brain and your thoughts become more pattern and image driven. So it's much more suggestible. So basically, you stop arguing with yourself. You stop arguing with magic. You stop arguing with the results and you believe and you begin to work that energy and push that towards your will. For witches, for magical practitioners, spell work isn't just the tools and the words. Those are part of it. No matter what Chelle says, those are definitely part of it. Words alone, actions alone won't get you there. It's not going to get your spell to actually work. Maybe on a minor level it might. But spells are powered by the energy that you raise, and that starts in your subconscious. And that energy comes from felt experience, imagery, by belief at those deep levels of your brain, that deep knowing in your bones that this spell worked. You can feel that energy. You can push that energy. You know that that spell will hit its mark. Alpha is where that happens. So if you're doing a spell of protection and you say, I am protected, I am surrounded by a bubble of light, and that little nagging voice at the back of your head says, oh yeah, are you really? Then you are not protected. So you need to go into that deeper alpha level where you can truly convince that child brain, that magical brain, and make it fully believe that you are protected by that bubble of light. And you will be, you are. Just like there are different levels of the brain, beta, alpha, theta, and delta, there are different levels of an alpha state. You can have the early morning stares and be a little zoned out in the morning, and that's a light alpha state, all the way to hypnosis, which will put you into a much deeper alpha state, almost to a theta state. And that is where real manifestation, real energy work can take place. The more you work at getting into alpha, the more you practice it, you'll be able to soon put yourself into that light alpha state where you can be in a flow state when you're working or in a creative state or if you're working magic. And learning to hypnotize yourself, learning to put yourself into a deeper alpha, into a light hypnotic state, is going to very much empower your meditations and empower your spell work. Now, our regular listeners know that the book Power of the Witch by Laurie Cabot is what introduced Chelle to witchcraft. Well, that same book is what introduced me to alpha states, meditation, and hypnosis, and started me on the path of energy work and brain hacking that I'm on today. Before I'd read that book, I had meditated a little bit, but it hadn't really worked for me. I was fascinated with hypnosis and with meditation, but wasn't able to get it to really click. As a kid, like a lot of us, I was into fables and myths, folk tales, stories of supernatural people and events. And one of my favorite people to read about was Edgar Cayce, the sleeping prophet. And because of him and what he did, I was fascinated by hypnosis and past life regression and wanted to learn everything I could about it. So when I read Laurie Cabot's book, Power of the Witch, she has a chapter about hypnosis and alpha states, and she had this amazing crystal countdown meditation. And using that, I was able to immediately get myself into an alpha state, into a light hypnotic state, and I was able to see and work with magical energy so much more easily. And I was so fascinated with what I was able to do with this that I immediately showed my new witchy friends, including Chelle. And I will never forget the first time that using that crystal countdown meditation, I was able to put another person into a hypnotic state. And I don't know, this was quite a while ago. Maybe I was playing a long game though, because she's now dating one of my brothers and they are the absolute cutest couple. So I don't know. Hi, Mick. But that started me on the path to become a trained hypnotherapist and to learn about how hypnosis and alpha states and brain hacking can really bring your spell work to the next level. So according to Laurie Cabot, a lot of our knowledge of the magic of the world goes back to Pythagoras, who was a philosopher, a mathematician, a scientist, and so much more. He connected numbers to magic and to the universe and to the divine itself. And Laurie Cabot applied this idea of the magic of numbers and layered it on colors, the same colors that are associated with chakras, with the colors of the rainbow, and also associated with the different levels, the 7 different layers of an alpha state itself. So when Cabot applied this magic of numbers to the colors of the light through a prism, she found that this combination was able to very easily trigger the brain's natural ability to go into an alpha state. And we have found, again, that because alpha is that bridge to the subconscious, the very suggestible, very magical part of your brain, being in that state is ideal for affirmations, for belief shifting, and for spell work. It is a magical flow state, and it allows you to get into deep focus. When you're in that state, it feels a lot like before you've had your coffee first thing in the morning, or when you've been driving the same route home every single day and you kind of zone out and forget where you're at, and then suddenly you're at home and you don't know how you got there. You're probably in an alpha state. It's that feeling when you're kind of in the groove at work and everything's coming to you easily and you're taking care of it, or you're doing artwork or a sport or something that you love to do. It's kind of that zone where everything around you fades out and you're just doing that thing and focused on that. You might not even hear someone call your name. You're so into that zone. That's an alpha state. It kind of does feel a bit like being zony, being zoned out. So you can be trained to enter that state in and out at will. You can train yourself to do that. Our brains love patterns. They actually like to be conditioned and will respond very easily and readily to that. So if you're able to create a mental cue for yourself when you sit down to enter a flow state or an alpha state, your brain will remember that and will respond. So this could be something as simple as a phrase or a mantra that you repeat, music that you listen to when you go into an alpha state, or even a certain number of deep breaths or a place on your body that you tap with your hand. If you do exactly the same thing every time before entering an alpha state, your brain will recognize that and begin acting on that established cue, and that will help you to enter the alpha state, that state of flow, that magical way of thinking much more quickly. In the beginning to start this, I recommend training that habit by meditating in the same place every time. It doesn't have to be at the same time of day, but it can. But by being in the same place, the same chair, the same part of your room, maybe have the same incense or the same music going on in the background, these cues are going to, over time, help you create that habit, help you to associate them with the alpha state to the point where once you have done this enough, just sitting in that spot, lighting the incense and putting on the music, you'll be in alpha at that moment without having to do any other steps. That's how much our brain likes these patterns, likes these habits. So some tips to keep in mind when you practice this meditation is you're definitely going to want a spot where you're going to be quiet and undisturbed. Start with short sessions. The meditation will be about 15 minutes long. Just start with that and then increase the time as you get better and better at it. Or decrease the time and see how quickly you can get into and out of alpha with practice. Be patient with yourself. This is a practice. Part of the fun of this is trying it, trying new things, seeing what works for you, seeing what helps your magical brain get into an alpha state and get ready to work with magic and magical energy. Once you've practiced meditating and getting into an alpha state, then what? What do you do with it from there? What's the point? The first point is getting into alpha itself. But once you're able to do that, the next step is going to be working magic in that state. Are you able to pick up a candle and light it and stay in an alpha state? Sometimes that can be difficult. Sitting still and being in alpha can be different than trying to get up and gather the components of a spell and then actually do the spell while staying in alpha. So first practice getting into alpha while you're sitting, and then maybe practice working a simple candle spell while you're in alpha and maintain that alpha state throughout the entire candle spell. Maybe once you're able to do a simple candle spell and maintain alpha, then try getting into alpha and doing a walking meditation around your home or doing a home blessing while you walk around and draw energetic sigils around your doorways and windows while in alpha. It's about building a practice. It's about training those muscles. It's about training your brain to be in this state and to perform magical actions in this alpha state. I find that the best use of an alpha state, particularly in the beginning, is to feel and envision energy and energetic flows around you. So I would recommend first learning to get into and out of alpha easily, regularly, and then start visualizing energy. Get yourself into alpha and start picturing energy maybe between the palms of your hands and feel that energy grow, the heat in your palms. See if you can cup your hands together and turn it into an actual ball between them. See what color that ball of energy is. See if you can change the color or the shape. Stretch your hands apart and see if that energy can follow. Work with envisioning the energy, receiving it in one hand, pushing it in another, bouncing energy back and forth from palm to palm. But practice visioning, feeling, and summoning that energy while in alpha. But as usual, I'm getting a little ahead of myself. Those are for later episodes. Let's bring it back to what to expect for the meditation in the next episode. Well, Laurie Cabot's Crystal Countdown meditation is designed to help you get in touch with your third eye, what some people think is actually a vestigial gland located in your brain, roughly between your eyes and the center of your forehead. And that, they believe, is the center where all of your magic power can come from, the third eye. And an alpha meditation will help you to activate that power center by closing your eyes, by calming your breathing, by reducing the stimulus around you, and then counting and following the colors of a prism. You allow your brain to slow down, to quiet, to enter that alpha state. It's that place where you can get lost in daydreams that feel almost real, where you can lose track of time. Even Einstein said that time and space are modes by which we think and not conditions in which we live. So time travel is possible in your mind in an alpha state. Moving backwards to do shadow work, moving forwards to enact spellcraft. In alpha, with your third eye activated, this type of spell work is possible and powerful. All you'll need for this meditation is a quiet and comfortable place. Preferably the same place every day, but it's not required, just recommended. The only breathing exercises necessary for this particular alpha meditation is to pay attention to your breathing. Nothing special is required or needed. Just breathe normally. And if asked to pay attention to your breath, just be aware of the inhalations and exhalations. Now, most of this meditation is visualization. And as many of you know, I can't visualize very well in my brain. I don't see pictures. I mostly see words. And if you're like that, that's okay. There's nothing wrong with how we, quote unquote, see things in our head. So when I say imagine, pretend, visualize, whichever one of those works for you, that's what you should latch onto. If visualization doesn't work, don't worry about the word. Just visualize the way you do. Think in words, feelings, emotions, pictures, but try to stay with the colors and the numbers and the imagery that I'm giving you. In the meditation, we talk about going down, moving down, deeper and deeper, down into our subconscious, down into our magical brain. And at the same time, we're moving up our body into our third eye. So some people have a little bit of a struggle with that, with those two different directions. But just remember that as we're moving up our bodies with relaxation, we're moving deeper down into our brain, into that subconscious magical place where all your witchy energy resides. So we'll be moving down into your brain, into your subconscious magical mind, and we'll be counting down from 7 to 1. But we'll be moving up the body from our base chakra up to the third eye. So those are just a few things to keep in mind as you get ready to do the meditation that'll be in the following episode. And again, please remember that this is a practice. It may work for you the first time. It may not work for you until the 50th time, but it will get better and better. Thank you so much for joining me on this solo episode. Next Friday, we will be back with a new episode, and Chelle will be back in the studio with us. We also have a new P.O. box that we will be unveiling soon, and some surprises coming up for you guys this spring. We're very excited about all the new things popping up for all of our listeners and for us here at Back on the Broomstick. If you've enjoyed this episode, please like, subscribe, give us a review, give us some stars. It really helps this show out, and it makes Chelle and I cackle like little witches. Again, thank you so much for listening to this episode. We will see you next week. In the meantime, be wise, be wicked, and keep it witchy.